guys, it's Gibson, and welcome to another episode of We Should Talk. I don't know about you guys, but I am still thinking about the various October surprises that we've already gotten this month. And no, I'm not talking about anything in relation to the election. I'm talking about the fact that one, Adele is hosting Saturday Night Live this weekend, and two, Ariana Grande is going to release an album by the end of the month. Both of these things were total curveballs, very unexpected, but very welcome nonetheless. And I think especially Adele hosting Saturday Night Live was a total curveball. There's been rumors for months or years, honestly, at this point, that she's getting ready to release the follow-up to 25. We're getting the post-divorce album. We're getting those barn-burning ballads that we have all been craving for a while now. But no, like this SNL announcement is not tied to any music, at least that we know of so far. There are rumors that it will come after the hosting gig. But she's curiously not the musical guest. Her is the musical guest. So Adele is strictly hosting Saturday Night Live. And as somebody who still watches her carpool karaoke segment, that's from like 4 years ago, I watch it like every month. I can confidently say that she is one of the funniest non-comedian celebrities. Like, she is hilarious. So she's going to kill it on SNL. I hope that we get, new music directly following. Usually when somebody goes on SNL, they are promoting something. So hopefully this is like just kind of the kickstart of a new Adele era for us. But regardless, I'm very happy about the fact that we're finally going to get headlines around Adele that aren't tied to like her big weight loss transformation and whatever. Like, I feel like every time a new photo of her emerges these days, it's just like a roundup of like headlines that are nitpicking her body, and I'm just like so over it. So I just want her to kill on SNL. I want her to like drop an album announcement right after, and then we can all be happy and welcome the new Adele era. But we will be getting definitely a new era from Ariana Grande, who again just did like a nonchalant tweet about like, can't wait to give you guys my album by the end of the month. And it's like, wait, what? You aren't supposed to be releasing an album right now. This is her third album in 2 years, essentially. So she's just the gift that keeps on giving. It's called Positions, I think. It's either the song or the album is called Positions. And a lot of people think that is tied to like sex positions. So this could be Ariana Grande's like really like dark, sultry, sexy moment. And if it's anything like that of like Rihanna's Rated R, or Britney's Blackout, or Christina Aguilera's Dirty, count me in. Like, this is going to be an amazing album. It will be in my rotation. I'll be dancing around my apartment alone, just like I still am to all the other albums that we have not been able to see live, like Dua Lipa's, Lady Gaga's, Taylor Swift's, Haim's, like all these albums this year that we just like haven't been able to see live. We're adding Ariana Grande to that list, and we are just like kind of waiting for that concert to happen at some point in the future. But anyway, those are the October surprises that I'm excited about. I want more of those positive vibes to come my way through these October surprises, so hopefully they're not done. But speaking of positive vibes, the guest on this week's podcast brought them all. Danny Pellegrino, who hosts Everything Iconic with Danny Pellegrino, which is an amazing podcast if you aren't already familiar with it. He does Bravo episode breakdowns. He interviews Bravo talent. He interviews celebrities who aren't related to Bravo at all. But he really imbues all of his content, all of his episodes, everything he posts online with like a positive, optimistic, funny vibe. And I don't think enough people are doing that these days. And so I really love what Danny puts out there. And we've become friends just through being connected on social media. We met last year at BravoCon. And our conversation was really just kind of like about us. Kind of like talking about our shared experience, learning more about how he got to his point. Why did he start his podcast? What's behind the name Everything Iconic? What was he doing before? And then just kind of sharing our different opinions on living a lot of our lives professionally, at least online. And the kind of the experience that comes with that. Can you take social media breaks? Is that okay? Is that possible? And dealing with like negativity online. And we also shared a bunch of our obviously Bravo opinions on things that are happening these days. And it was just a really fun way to connect with Danny. And I think if you're a fan of his, if you are a fan of Bravo, if you're just a fan of pop culture and want something positive in your life, Danny is the person for you. So definitely stay tuned for that later in the episode. But as I was thinking about the way that Danny does his interviews and the positive kind of way that he approaches putting things online, I kind of felt like a connection to that in terms of how I approach my interviews for the past several years. A lot of the time when I'm interviewing a celebrity, it's one of like 15 interviews they're doing that day as a big press day for something, they're promoting something, and they're probably being asked the same questions over and over and over again. And, I have to ask some of those questions too. Sometimes it's just part of the gig. But, when you have 10 minutes, 12 minutes, 8 minutes with somebody, you want to make it memorable for them in some capacity, right? Like you don't want to just be some forgettable interaction moment. So I always try to ask them something that's either kind of personal or something that only I can ask, or just something that like I know that nobody else is going to be asking about that day. And a good example of that is the first time that I interviewed Nick Jonas. I was a big Jonas Brothers fan in high school, and I saw them open up for Hannah Montana when I was a freshman in high school. And I knew that, 10 years later, when I was interviewing him in a hotel room in downtown Manhattan, that nobody else that day was going to be asking about that and kind of triggering those memories for him. So halfway through my interview, I sort of pivoted, and it wasn't even a question. I just like sort of told him that I had seen him open for Hannah Montana, and we're the exact same age, so it was sort of like spoke to like our very different paths in life, and it just like sort of opened up this whole other sort of like side conversation that we could have about like reflecting about how far he's come in his career and sort of like what it was like being embedded in that really kind of Disney-centric mayhem as a teenager. And it also really made an impact on him because I interviewed him again like 18 months later. He was doing a joint press day with John Barbados. They were releasing a fragrance together. And the moment I walked into the room, he stood up and he was like, "Oh, I remember you. Like, you're a great interviewer." And I'm not telling you that to like brag about the fact that Nick Jonas thinks that I'm a good interviewer. I'm telling you that because I think that it shows that there is a way to make an impact on these people and to make these little quick interviews fun for both sides. Like, it's fun for me to bring up the fact that I saw him open for Hannah Montana a decade ago, and it's fun for him to hear that. And it sort of just like, when I told him that, he perked up, and I think it just like made this interview, this quick interview, this little interaction memorable for him. And the fact that, he didn't remember my name, which is like, I'm not gonna, that I'm not holding that against him. The fact that he even wanted to say that to me spoke to the fact that, he had fun last time we talked, and he was going to have fun this time, and he was going to maybe give me more this time because he trusted that this conversation was going to be like kind of good for both sides. And that's just sort of like how I try to approach most of my interviews. And clearly it works sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't really work. Maybe depends on the person's mood or what have you. But I think that I like to, again, put a positive spin on things, and so does Danny. And so, I want you to hear more from him about sort of why he's like that and why he tries to really be optimistic in sort of the way that he approaches his interviews. So without further ado, here's my interview with Danny Pellegrino, host of Everything Iconic with Danny Pellegrino, available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on his YouTube channel. Enjoy. All right, so we are here with Danny Pellegrino, host of the podcast Everything Iconic. Danny, thanks for coming into the show. How are you?
Gibson, I'm so able to finally do this. I love you from afar. I feel like we're friends from afar, but I'm glad we get to finally be face to face at least.
Yes, it's kind of like the classic social media friend, and then we're video chatting. We've actually met in person. We met at BravoCon last year, but it was in passing. So again, really excited to do this. We're both huge Bravo Housewives people.
Can we just talk really briefly right off the top about how sad we are about BravoCon not being this year?
I know. It's like I was right after it finished. I was sort of like, okay, like every year we're going to be doing this. We're going to be reuniting with everyone at BravoCon, like new people. And then I'm like, is it just going to be a one-off event? Like, it will ever happen again? I don't know.
I hope so. It was just so much fun, unexpectedly fun. And I hope we get to do it again.
I agree. So how are you doing? Obviously, we were just chatting that a lot is going on this year. What's keeping you grounded these days?
I don't know that I am keeping grounded, to be honest with you. I wish I could say I was, but I feel like this has just been a tough year, and I don't know. I'm trying to get through it, and I feel like we're all just trying to smile kind of through it and find some things to hold on to and feel grateful for and everything. But some days I just don't feel that, and I don't know. It's tough though, and I know everyone's got sort of different levels of it, and I always feel almost bad complaining certain times, right? Like it's like if something's going wrong, I know people have it way worse, but it's just been a challenging year, I think, for everyone. And I think we all just need to get through it. And hopefully at some point in 2021, things will be better. But for now, it's just sort of shitty, but it's shitty.
It really is day by day. I think it's like the definition of day by day. Like, we never know how we're going to wake up and feel. So I'd love to kick us off with just like hearing more about how you got here. What was your path to Everything Iconic? Because you have a lot of loyal listeners, but I'm not sure how many people are super familiar with that path, including myself.
Yeah, I used to do stand up and sketch comedy around Los Angeles, and before I moved to Los Angeles, I actually was in Chicago, and I was studying at Second City in the IO Theater there. And nothing was really working for me career-wise, and I was having just trouble finding sort of my niche or whatever. And then at some point, I started an Instagram account where I was really making a lot of memes, specifically like Housewives pop culture memes. And
Mm-hmm.
I noticed there started to get a little bit of a following of like-minded kind of people. And a friend actually recommended that I start a podcast. I remember she said, like, you can perform sort of without ever having to leave your house. So without getting on a stage. And at that point, I mean, I was performing for like threes of people. It was like sometimes I would do an improv or sketch show where there was like more people on stage than there were
Right.
in the audience. So I started a podcast and I didn't expect it to take off. The people wonder about the name, and the name actually, I always feel like it's a funny story. So I apologize if people have heard this before, but I noticed I was on Britney Spears. I don't know if it was her Twitter or Instagram, but she had posted just a picture of an ear of corn. And, like it was just a Google
Yes.
image search of an ear of corn. And
oh yeah, I remember that one.
Oh my God, yeah. So I remember looking at it, and everyone had written like iconic underneath it. And it was just so funny to me that so many people were writing iconic under it. And I also thought it was great because it was like a celebration of something. People love Britney, of course, because she's the best. But
Mm-hmm.
people were celebrating just this ear of corn picture, and I thought that was funny and also really a positive thing and a great thing. So that's how the name came to be. And then I never expected people to listen, but it kind of, people started to listen, and it's snowballed from there, I guess.
It really has. When did you sort of know that you had sort of successfully launched this? Like that you were like, okay, like I can do this, and people are listening and they're liking what they're hearing. And
I remember talking to Ben and Ronnie, who you might know from Watch What Crappens,
mm-hmm.
and I forget which one of them said it, but early on, I remember they told me consistency is key with this kind of thing, with the podcast medium or really any kind of medium. And I noticed that too with my Instagram account. It was like, I had to post every single day in order for it to grow. And
right.
With the podcast, they had said consistency. People want to make you part of their routine, but you have to make it easy for them. So it's like, they do, I think, 5 episodes a week, and then plus maybe
So
bonus
much.
episodes.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
it's a lot. It's a lot.
A lot.
But they're the best. And
yeah, of course.
I think I just tried to keep that in mind and like never miss a week. And then eventually I moved to 2 episodes a week. And I noticed when I moved to 2 episodes a week, that's when I noticed it started growing more quickly. And
mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of when I realized that people were listening, and I could maybe make it more of a career thing instead of a hobby thing.
For sure. And I think one thing that sticks with me about you, and I think a lot of people love it about you, is that you are like, everything you put out is very positive. Like, I think that a lot of times in this like cottage industry of like Bravo adjacent like podcasts and merch and Instagram pages, people can get pretty negative and try to like sort of tear these people down and like take it extremely seriously. And like, I feel like you just sort of like, you try to stay optimistic about it and be positive about it. Is that something that you like, that is like top of mind for you when or is that just how you are kind of as a person?
I think a little bit of both. I think I try to keep positive. I like all this stuff. Like, so
Yeah.
the Housewives and stuff, it's like, I don't want to tear it down because I genuinely enjoy watching it. And I think we've just sort of become as a culture so negative, and rightfully so for a lot of reasons. But
Mm-hmm.
I try to keep it positive, and I try to celebrate the things that I love instead of doing the opposite. And I also realized very early on, like, other people do that sort of mean sense of humor better than I do. I think there are people that do it really well.
Right.
But it's not really me. It's not my style. So I can definitely be a little snarky and sarcastic, but other people do it better than I can. And so I just try to stay in my lane, I guess, a little bit. And I try to stay positive. And especially now, I was just talking to a friend about this. I think comedy in general has moved very, very much away from that. Like, I think 10 years ago, everything in media, everyone was doing that mean sense of humor. If you
Totally.
turned on the E network, just off the top of mind, if you turned on E and watched red carpet coverage, everything was like so nasty and mean. And I'd say the jokes were hitting about 10% of the time, but people, that was the style of humor. Even if you look back on the movies like Mean Girls and stuff like that, I don't know that I love Mean Girls, but I don't know that in 2020, that's the kind of humor that collectively we're all interested in. And things shift and change, but I think we're in a different spot right now.
I think you're right. I think that there's sort of like, in some ways, yeah, like there is so much more negativity just like in the world and on social media, but it's also like there's more accountability, I think, than there was 10 years ago. And so you can't really get away with some of that anymore either.
Yeah. And I think our news is so negative and toxic, and the world events and everything is, that it seems to me that our media is moving just so far away from that. And we're seeing more like silly game shows
Mm-hmm.
and just more lighthearted things. Even, that Emily in Paris, did you watch that? You watched that, right?
Yeah, I did watch that. Yeah. I was like
It's like,
obsessed. It was like so good, but so bad, you know?
totally. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was terrible, but also we all couldn't stop watching it. But I think it was interesting. It got so much criticism, or it's been getting so much criticism. And a lot of the criticism I'm noticing is like the negativity. Like they got in a fight with a pizza chain because they trash
They like said
talked.
it was bad, right?
Yeah. And I think it goes to that same idea of we're kind of culturally past that a little bit. And so seeing something like that, which feels like it was made in 2008 or 2007 is shocking, but we're all watching it. So, joke's on us.
Bring on season 2, honestly. So kind of going into the sort of Bravo world, I'm curious, like how have you seen sort of like, I mean, I just mentioned sort of like this cottage industry of other podcasts and all these like fan pages just dedicated to these shows that, I mean, there's like, I can't even count how many there are. And how have you noticed sort of like this landscape change? Because I've definitely noticed it change, but I'm curious sort of what you have observed just about as you've kind of like been involved in this world for so many years now.
Yeah, I think it used to be more fun, and I hate to say that, but I remember watching Housewives 5 years ago and going on Twitter, and it was so much fun, and
Yeah.
you could say things, you could be critical and have fun, and like I said, be snarky, and people were all on the same page. But now everyone has their faves, and we're all so divided, and it's like if you critique anyone, then suddenly you're getting attacked. And
Mm-hmm.
and so oftentimes I find myself, whether it be Instagram or Twitter or anything, like I'll either put something up and then I delete it right away because I'm like, I don't even feel like dealing with, like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't want my phone just getting negative
Blowing up. Yeah.
messages. Or anytime I log in there to just see a nasty response. And back in the day, that sounds,
Like 5 years ago.
even just a few years ago, you'd watch it and it would be fun. And I noticed the shift. Personally, I noticed when we had that season where it was Carol and Bethany,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
that's when I noticed like there being like two sides division kind of forming, and there was no middle ground. And I
There's
was
no
frustrated,
nuance.
no nuance. And I still get frustrated because I did Watch What Happens Live, and I said like I was Team Carol for that, but I love Bethany. Like
Right.
and I feel like, why can't it be both?
Mm-hmm. It was the same thing with Beverly Hills last summer, which was like, I mean, that's when I really was like, holy shit, like people are vicious. Like you can't,
Yeah,
you have to be on one side or the other. It's the same thing
right.
with Potomac this year, where it's like, are you Team Candace or Team Monique? And I'm like, well, like, I see bad things on both sides. Like you're kind of forced into this corner, and then I don't know. It's a lot
And
to deal with.
the gray space is what I find most interesting about these shows. And I find
Same.
that for the most part, these shows do try to present it to an audience so that they can choose. I do think Beverly Hills got a little, even to the point where like I felt like the editors and production were trying to tell us what side to be on.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of the other franchises, I do feel like we are we are presented the information, then we get to decide. And some one week you might be on one side and then the next the other. But it's gotten to the point where it's like people choose their sides at
And they
episode
stick to
1
it.
and they stick to it. And if you are against that, then you will get the meanest. I mean, I've seen some of the meanest things.
But
And
you're right.
it's
It makes
hard.
it makes you want to delete whatever you posted about
Oh
it.
yeah.
It makes, I try not to even like look at the replies to my tweets anymore because it's just too like it's too much.
Yeah.
And it's like I said what I said. Like
I said
I
what I
thought what I
said.
thought, and like that's it. Like I don't know. It's not that they don't want to engage in the conversation, but you know.
And we sort of move on. It's like, you tweet something and then you're like, you're already on to the next, you're already watching the next show. Like
Exactly.
I'm already on to the next thing. And it is hard, but, and I had to try to stop too, because it was getting so negative. Even I can't read my podcast reviews because it's like, I would see something about, you know, a house. I can't believe you said you weren't Team Bethany or something. It's like, I love Bethany, but like, there's no nuance. Anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. It's like, I want to engage in that conversation, but if people aren't going to like listen to what I have to say, then I'm not going to maybe listen to what you have to say. And that's the tough part. So you've had a lot of people on your show, both on and off Bravo, but and you've had some in-person interactions with some of these Bravo people. What's your all-time favorite interaction with a housewife?
With a housewife. Well, BravoCon was really amazing. Just you were on the red carpet or whatever for Watch What Happens Live, and that was just pretty wild because it was so many people. Oh, you know, I'd say actually at BravoCon, I hosted a panel with Ariana and Tom from Vanderpump Rules, and backstage there was like, before we went out, there was just all these different Bravo celebrities that were like interacting with each other. Like Shannon Bedore was talking to Chef Ben from Below Deck, and then Raquel from Vanderpump Rules. It was just like the weirdest sort of circus mix of people, and that was really cool. Yeah, all of BravoCon was just like that. Everywhere you turn, there'd be a new weird interaction that you'd witness.
Oh yeah, like after that Watch What Happens Live red carpet, which for people that don't know, like literally everyone who appeared in that episode just like was coming down the red carpet like every 5 seconds. And then afterwards, my friend Bridget from The Cut, we like went to go to the audience. We had to like leave the red carpet and then go back in, and there was like this barricade set up for the additional people that were coming. And like you would have thought that like Jennifer Aniston was walking out of the car, but then you look up and it's like Lala and Randall, and it's just like people are screaming their heads up. That was that experience was just sort of lightning in a bottle.
So wild. It was so wild, and they did such a good job of. I know people were upset because there weren't a lot of tickets available, unfortunately, but I think it made it really special and small. Like it, even though a lot of the events felt huge, for the most part, it felt very intimate.
Did you have any awkward interactions there? Like,
I'm sure I was really ill that weekend. I found out later my appendix had burst. I had found out in January, but like in November, so I was like really ill that weekend.
My God, Danny.
And I didn't know what was wrong with me. I was like, why am I so sick? So I wasn't like myself the whole weekend, to be honest with you, but if it would have been any other event, I would have like crawled in a bed and not did it. But it was like the energy of everyone kind of like kept everything up. And I have to say, Margaret Josephs, I had told her I wasn't feeling well, and she kept checking in on me on the weekend. And I felt like that was so nice because I didn't really like know her that well. And I just thought that was really kind of her. But I'm trying to think bad interactions. I don't think I had any bad ones. Is that what you asked?
I guess like no. Well, it's more like I don't know. Like I feel like you've met a lot of these people, you've interviewed them, and then you're also sort of commenting on them, and I think it kind of gets into this sort of like. I mean, it's honestly similarly for me. It's like I interview a lot of people every season, but then like I also want to sort of commentate about it on Twitter, and it's like, how do you get like critical or sort of like snarky about somebody who like might follow you on Twitter, or you might see sometime or want to get on your show. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, there's a weird balance. And I'd say for the most part, like 80% of the Bravo celebrities, they're like, they get it. And so like they're cool with you talking shit about them 1 minute and then interviewing. Like they get it. They get that it's, fun. It's all in good fun. So I'd say for the most part, I always get frustrated when one of them, when you're talking, and you've had this, I'm sure, before, where they don't want you to ask about the show. Like they want to come on the podcast or the show or whatever, but they don't want you to ask about something going on. And it's like, well, what are we going to talk about? Like, that's what, like you're on this show. And sometimes it's not always them. It's maybe like the network doesn't want to talk about,
right?
Yeah. Or their connection. But I've had a couple times where they don't want to talk about something. And I just had someone this week asked to come on the show, but then like they wouldn't talk about the show. They wanted to talk about their goods, their wares, their hawking.
And
I'm like, well, if you can't say anything about the show, then we're not, what are we doing here? Because then the audience just gets pissed
Yeah,
at you.
they think that you just like skated around everything. Like that happened to me with with Bethany, like on a red carpet once. It was her last season on New York, and I was like, it just premiered. Like we're gonna act, like I'm gonna, and it was like, nope, no Housewives questions. And it's like, okay, well, I guess I'll ask about, I don't even know, Skinny Girl. You know,
Right. And then
again, love Bethany.
people get mad then, and then they're like, why didn't you
Why
ask
didn't you get the
something? And it's
tea?
like,
Exactly.
and I think sometimes you do have to kind of weigh the pros and cons. It's like, well, should I have this person to talk about other things because they might have this other interesting thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then maybe I could slip in a question.
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
know.
It's a game. It's part of the. I guess it's just part of the deal. But
But with
I think
reality
you're
stars, I think that you have to talk about your reality show. It's like not like you're an
100%.
actor or something. And out of anyone, I think Bethany probably has the most. Uh, she's one of the few people that should be allowed now to say I'm not talking about Housewives
For
because she has
sure.
so many other things going on.
And she's not on it anymore. Yeah.
But these other people who are promoting their wares and they have one other like licensing deal that they want to promote. It's like, come on, you have to talk about your show then.
You can only ask about it so many times, so many questions. And I mean, this sort of gets into this idea. It's like, okay, is it still really fun? How much do you enjoy it versus how much do you really think about it as sort of like a chore or work? And I'm curious what your mentality is about that. Because I do think there is still fun to be had, obviously, but maybe not as much as before.
Yeah, I think it depends on the shows and the seasons. Like Potomac is so good right now that it's been fun to cover it.
Yes.
And I went back and forth with Orange County because I recap certain shows. I don't recap all of them, but I kind of try to pick and choose which ones I want to recap. And I went back and forth because I've covered Orange County for so many years and there's been so much controversy. And then also we see that there's going to be COVID related stuff. And it's just like, it's not so fun to cover that to me.
Right.
And so I don't think I'm not recapping it like I regularly would cover it. And I just had to make a decision like, is this going to be fun for me? Because if it's not fun, then I don't want to just go to a microphone and complain for an hour
Right.
about a show every
Mm-hmm.
week. And so sometimes it does feel like a chore. And so I try to stay away from anything that does feel that way. And with my show, I try to sprinkle in other things, other interviews with people so that it keeps it fresh for me. And I know sometimes the audience, it's not even like their favorite thing, but I do it because it makes me happy. And so I try to keep it fresh that way. But sometimes when I have to sit down, there was a time a few months ago when there were so many things airing and I was covering them all and I was having to sit down and take notes on 4 shows
Right.
and then
That's it.
record and then edit and also I'm booking people and doing all this stuff. I'm like, oh my God, this is too much. It can be overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when there was 4 on, it was just too much, and it's too much. It you got to spread it out. And I feel like you said the name for Everything Iconic was born out of like Instagram comments on a Britney Spears Instagram post, but to me it's sort of like it seems like you have always wanted Everything Iconic to not just be a Bravo a podcast. Like you have other celebrities on there for interviews. You talk about other things. Was that I'm assuming that was always sort of top of mind for you?
Yeah, my very first 2 episodes, they were interviews with other reality people outside of the Bravo world. And
Mm-hmm.
I like doing the Bravo stuff and it's really fun. And those episodes tend to do the best, better than like the interviews
Right.
it depends on who the person is or whatever. But I do try to not be just in that thing because I like all this other stuff. And I don't want to just do the Bravo stuff, even though I love it. So as much as I can, I try to have other things.
Mm-hmm. And you've had some really great guests that were non-Bravo. I mean, I think of like Jennifer Love Hewitt was on there. I remember that interview was really great. You had Bonnie Hunt on there. Like who have been sort of your most memorable non-Bravo experiences through your show?
Yeah, those 2 were really special to me. I mean,
Yeah.
Jennifer Love Hewitt, I used to have her poster on my wall.
Amazing.
I know what you did last summer and I still know what you did last. And then she was like at my kitchen table, which was so weird.
Surreal.
Yeah, so she was really exciting. I think Katie Couric was really exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, Beverly D'Angelo was a really good interview. She was on the Vacation movies and she played Griswold, the wife, in the
Yeah, I know who you're
Vacation
talking
movie.
about.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And I just had sort of not low expectations, but I just didn't have any huge expectations for the interview, and I ended up loving it. And
Mm-hmm.
I recently had Kathy Lee Gifford on, and she really got into.
That's
I
a
love
life
her.
goal for you. Yeah.
I love her. I love a talk show person, like anyone
Yes.
who's like been in the talk show space. But also, I thought we got into like some interesting conversations about like faith and things that are just topics I wouldn't normally get into. So I always like when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
We get into different kind of
Totally.
conversations that are more
Yeah.
serious.
Well, I feel like that's also another thing that people really do love about you, which is that you are very open about mental health. And that's something that you talk about a lot. And you kind of, you'll like tweet something really positive out for just for people to like have a good weekend or something like that. And it's like, but I think that that's again, like why people probably just feel really connected to you. And what like sort of got you interested in mental health and sort of just like passionate about it?
Yeah, well, I mean, the podcast, I mentioned how it started, but when my friend came to me and was like, you should start a podcast, I was like in a really deep depression. Like I couldn't get out of bed and I thought, I'm never going to perform again. I'm done. Nothing was working for me. I was sad. And so it really came out of that. So very early
Mm.
on, I was like, I just want to be very open and honest about if I'm having like a shitty mental health day, I'll try to talk about it. And if I ever see an opening with a guest where we can discuss it and have a wider conversation about it, I try to always take it. Because also very early on, I noticed people were messaging me or reaching out and saying that a certain conversation about mental health helped them or affected them. And so I just try to be honest and open about it. And it makes me feel good. And it makes me feel like the show has a little bit more substance than it would if I didn't get into those conversations. Um, and it helps me too. Like selfishly,
Totally.
it's like if I'm able to talk about it, then I feel better. I'm like, oh,
You're
if
getting it
somebody
off
else
your
tells me,
chest.
yeah,
Yeah.
somebody else messages me and I'm like, I felt that way too today. I'm like, oh my God, thank you. Like that makes me
Mm-hmm.
feel good. So
Totally. Um, and do you going off that, like, do you take breaks as somebody who's like an extremely online person, just as like just like the nature of your job? Do you have to take social media breaks? Like, how do you approach that?
I'm not great at that, Gibson.
Okay. Okay.
But I do, I have sort of drawn lines as of within the past maybe 6 months or so. Like I mentioned, I don't look at my podcast reviews.
Mm-hmm.
I try to just use social media the right way and only look at the positive as much as possible because it's not real life, and it's such a small sampling of it. But on the flip side of the coin, it has been how I've been able to grow the show and
Right.
everything. And so there is a balance. There is a balance to it, but it's difficult. I don't know that I've quite found it exactly, but I do try. I don't know if that's a good answer.
I think it is,
It's hard. I don't
I don't think
know.
there is I don't think there is a right answer to that. It just
I,
like I feel like it's just more about like how you feel that
I'm
weekend. Like
always,
I don't
yeah,
know.
I'm always jealous. I was just watching an interview with the celebrity. I don't know who it was. Was it maybe Jessica Al or someone who was saying like, oh yeah, it's so important to get offline and you just can't be on it. It's not healthy, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it's easy for you to say because your career is not online. Like
Exactly.
if you're someone like us who's trying to grow everything and social media is so important for this whole thing. Like I'm trying to sell a book right now and it's like you need to put in your social media stats in the
Mm-hmm.
proposal and it's like they're looking at those things. And so
Yeah.
it's really easy for someone who's a huge celebrity who can simply tweet out one thing once a month and move on.
Or hire somebody to do that for them anyway. You know what I mean? Like, okay, approve the photo. Don't even have to log in. I remember one time I read that Selena Gomez like didn't even have her Instagram password, and I'm like, well, like you're like posting stories, so like there's something not adding up here. But like again, that'd be so nice. Like I don't want my
Right.
Instagram password,
I
but you
mean,
still maintain that presence.
we know Housewives and Bravo celebrities. It's like who don't run their socials at
Oh yeah.
all. And I always laugh because it's like I see people, I get this way too, but we all get so excited. It's like Countess Luann liked my tweet or whatever. And
But
it's
it's
like
actually the
but I
person
know
that
the
we know that's
person who it
running that
is.
account.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or like they'll make it onto like comments by Bravo or something. I'm just like, well, I just like know that wasn't them, but let's just go
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah, like Countess Luann doesn't even know her. She probably hasn't even ever logged into her Instagram account. But and also at the same time too, like sometimes I'll DM with people and I'm like, is this the celebrity, or is this just their
I
person?
know it's whatever, keeps us guessing, I
Right.
guess. Okay, so like just a quick rapid fire about some of the housewives. We talked about OC, and I know that you're probably not going to recap them. I don't even watch OC. Is that going to potentially just be like the first long running franchise that like we let go of fully?
You know, it'll be for me. I think it'll be for me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. We'll have to see how it goes. I'm not sure. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't understand a lot of the casting decisions they've made or choices they've made and in Orange County. And I do think it's ran for so many years. And I do think it's okay to like start fresh or reboot it
Yes.
or start over. And I don't understand why they haven't yet. And I know people like certain of the wives and they still deliver certain things. And um but I was wishing before this season that they would do like a full reboot of it, just because I'd
Yeah.
be so interested to see a fresh cast. That's why I'm so excited about Salt Lake City. It's like I want to see new
Totally.
people.
It's like we haven't gotten a full new cast in so long. Speaking of, one of the most recent ones is Dallas, who I think that like Dallas never fully figured it out necessarily. Like and the ratings reflect that. Like they're like, and I love some of the Dallas ladies, but what do you think about like Dallas and sort of like the future of that franchise?
Yeah, I'm curious to see where it goes. I think the season 2 and 3 were so good, and then the
Yeah.
most recent season it just sort of fell off. And I don't know if the budget is the same, because I wonder, and this is just me speculating, but I know the
Mm-hmm.
ratings for Dallas aren't as good as something like ratings for Beverly Hills. So I
Mm-hmm.
wonder if that's reflected in the budget. And because sometimes I was watching last season and I was thinking, is this like lower budget? Because it seems like they're not getting as many confessional looks, and then
Totally.
that ends up influencing and impacting the show we're
The quality of
watching.
the show. Exactly.
So
Yeah.
I don't know if they'll figure it out. I'm curious to see this season in the new. I think they have a couple new cast members, and I
Mm-hmm.
think Bravo in general is in a weird place right now because they're trying to figure out, like, we've had this cultural reckoning with so many different things, and they're kind of trying to decide if we address it on air or if we just get rid of these people who are troublesome. And I don't think they know. It's like we've seen
They're doing
certain
both.
cast members, they're doing both, and that seems strange to me. I don't understand that. But um I think in terms of Dallas, they got rid of Leanne, which was, for a reason. But then
Mm-hmm.
now they're also, I hear, going to address, like, Brandy had some
Things in the
situation.
past, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah. Some tweets, maybe. Yeah.
situations makes it sound so like clinical. She had a
Situations.
situation.
And then what about New York? I feel like, I mean, because New York is my number one, but obviously last season was like it wasn't a bad season by any means, but it wasn't their best by any means either.
Yeah.
What do you hope the sort of the future of that looks like? Because I know what I want, but I'm curious what you would want.
Yeah, this season of New York, it wasn't as good, but then we're a couple weeks out of it now, and I'm like, I miss them
Miss
so
it.
much. Like, they were
Yeah.
so fun, and even though it was like maybe its worst season as a show, it still was like better than anything on television to
Exactly.
me.
Exactly.
So yeah, I miss it, and I know they have a couple new hires, and I hope they get back on track a little bit. And I think they needed more cast members
For
last season.
sure.
It felt like, to me, Bethany decided last minute that she wasn't going to be there, and I kept saying, like, that should have opened up a lot of the budget, going back to the money thing, because she was getting
Yeah.
paid so much. So I didn't understand, even like halfway through, they didn't add new people. They could have added, I would have think they could have added a couple people, but
A
maybe it
friend
was
or two.
a friend or two, and like they had Elise, but they should have
She
added a
gets cut
few more
out.
people. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
then
And Tinsley
Tinsley.
left.
So Tinsley left. So, like, wasn't there a lot of money? Like, where did the money go?
Totally. Well, that's why I mean when we were hearing about like the Leah contract stuff, I'm like, well, didn't we literally let go of like three people last and Dorinda as well? So I'm just sort of I just hope they sort of go in like the Leah direction. I hope that they sort of
Yeah.
embrace her world a little bit more because it's current and new and with it. I mean, I love our classic like cast members, but I don't know. I just feel like that's like where the future could be for the show.
I imagine next season is being kind of two-sided in that way. I think we'll have like the OGs, and then we'll have Leah. And I know they hired that Ebony woman, and then I think there's
Yes.
a couple other ones. And I actually
Hmm.
I heard there might be like an old person coming back in some capacity, not as like a full-time housewife, but
I'm into that. I'm into that. I feel like, I feel like as Bravo fans, we're sometimes stuck in the past a little bit. We always want the old people to come back. We always long for the glory days, but I don't know. It's like,
and
it's so hard.
I don't know if you feel this way too, but also it's like, I don't know where I hear things from anymore. I'm like, did I hear that?
Same.
Like, did somebody
did I make that up?
Was that a producer who told me that? Or did I dream that? Or did somebody, people DM me all the time. They're like, I heard from a costume person who works with that assistant, and they're coming back, or they're whatever. And so I don't know what's true and what's not.
I know. And that's also part of this world. It's like, we see so much of it while they're filming, and then it's just there's like so much speculation that goes into it that I just get exhausted by. So I just sometimes just like sit back and I'm like, I'll like mostly wait till the season is on air to like really pick it apart. But just like so much information.
And how many times have we seen people release a statement to Page Six, or they'll write an article about this new housewife, and then that new housewife never even comes to be, but that person was just trying to like get the press because they were in consideration and
speak their way onto the show, maybe. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh my God. Well, Danny, I feel like we have to probably wrap it up here soon, but I know that you always end your interviews by asking somebody one question. And so since this is sort of like we're like flipping the tables a little bit on you, I want to know, what is your favorite Mariah Carey song? Because that is something you always ask your guests.
I do. Yes. I love all of her songs. I'm like, she's my number one. I love her.
She is. Yeah.
My favorite is Forever. It's from the Daydream album. And it's just like a beautiful classic ballad. And it reminds me of my boyfriend. And we had this like, I don't know, just a moment. And it's sort of a breakup song, but it reminds me of this moment. And I just think it's the most stunning vocal. I think no one else could do that vocal. And people, anytime you hear a cover of it, like if you go on YouTube or when American Idol, remember they used to do like Mariah Week and stuff. I feel like it's an impossible version to do because her runs in that song are stunning and perfect. And I just love that song. But there's so many. I love The Roof. I love Breakdown. I love so many. The Distance from the new or from her last
that's a great one.
album. So there's so many.
Yeah. And then again, I
what's yours? Wait, Gibson, what's yours?
I have, let's see. I've been really listening to the Rarities recently, her newest ones, but like that's not one of those aren't my favorite. I do love Fantasy. That the first time I heard that was in Rush Hour when like the little girl singing in the back seat, and like the beginning of that song is like so euphoric and happy. I love Fantasy. But I'm sort of like a later era Mariah, I would say. So like Heartbreaker's also up there for me. There's like a lot of good memories attached to that song. Yeah. That was like one of my first CDs, that with the rainbow across her chest. That was a great one. So yeah.
Made so many of us gay.
Exactly. And then because you said everything iconic started with these comments on a Britney picture, I want to know your favorite Britney song as well.
Oh God, Britney. That's hard. This is a newer track, but I love Just Love Me. It's
really good.
From Glory. I love that one. And I kind of have like a similar thing where it's like a great memory of it. But in terms of earlier stuff, I love Toxic is sort of so cliche. But, but Just Love Me is my favorite.
Okay. A deep cut. I love that.
What's yours?
I love Sometimes. I love that song. Like that just like makes me happy. I've been sort of like in an oops I did it again phase as well, like that album. So like Lucky and some like the album cuts are really good on that. Like What You See Is What You Get is a great song. I don't know, like deep catalog. I could go for a while at Britney.
I was in a phase like a couple weeks ago where I was listening to Cinderella over and over again from
so good.
From
Britney,
that album.
I think.
Yeah. And it was like every time I'd work out, I'd repeat it. Yeah.
Well, Danny, this is so fun. I'm so glad that you were able to come on. Can you tell people where to follow you, where to hear everything iconic?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
Yeah.
Everything Iconic is anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can find me on social media at Danny Pellegrino. And then I started a new YouTube channel where you can watch some of the interviews that I've done over Zoom. It's youtube.com/Danny Pellegrino and the number 1. Yeah.
Love it. Well, Danny, have a great rest of your week. And again, thanks again.
Thank you. We'll talk soon.
All right. Bye.
Okay. Bye, Gibson.
For more stories from In the Know, go to intheknow.com. You can also follow In the Know on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. and find me, Gibson Johns, on Instagram and Twitter at Gibsonoma. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.